All right, well, joining us right now, KT McFarland, Fox News national security analyst. KT, you know Ambassador Bolton well, do you not?
Yeah, I sure do. Hey, maybe I ought to go to New Hampshire with you, John, just to keep you company.
Sounds good.
Wow, well, you can throw one of your lovely hats into the ring as well while you're up there, KT. Everybody's doing it. Listen, Kate, I would love for you to comment on this. I'm sure you saw it. President Obama, in an interview yesterday, he was asked a question about Scott Walker's criticism of his Iran deal. Listen to this.
It would be a foolish approach to take, and perhaps Mr. Walker, after he's taken some time to bone up on foreign policy, will feel the same way.
I have a feeling you might have a clever response to that.
Well, it's usually the refuge of people who really don't know what they're talking about and don't have any successes to claim when they have to go make fun of other people. I mean, frankly, it was beneath the President of the United States to do that. Why punch down? Talk about his program. If Obama's so proud of what he's done with Iran, with other foreign policies, then talk about those. Don't try to diminish and belittle someone else who's trying to seek a high office. It made President Obama look petty and cheap.
KT, I agree with that entirely. What's your sense of how well the president is doing in selling this, whatever it is, deal framework, hazy intentions coming out of Switzerland last week? What is your sense of where it's gone in Congress?
Well, you can't make a dog eat dog food if he doesn't like the dog food. Who cares about the commercials? The dog wants to eat good dog food, and Congress is looking at this, and it's a dog's dinner. They're not buying it. Certainly the Republicans aren't buying it, the conservatives aren't buying it, and even liberals, even Chuck Schumer and others are saying, hey, look, at least we want to have a say in this. We'll decide later whether we think it's a good deal. But the president keeps dodging and weaving to say, well, Congress, we're going to talk to them about it, but, the real important vote is the one at the United Nations. What, to me, though, John, the most upsetting interview the president gave was the one yesterday to National Public Radio, where he basically said, look, it's inevitable Iran is going to get nuclear weapons. Well, wait a minute. If it's inevitable they're going to get nuclear weapons, why are we lifting sanctions to ensure that the mullahs, the death to America chanting mullahs, the let's annihilate Israel mullahs, are going to be strengthened in power? So I think he's absolutely given lie to the whole notion that we're having this deal to prevent Iran from having nuclear weapons. We're having this deal to prevent a nuclear arms race in the Middle East.
Well, let me get into this Iran question, and I'm going to try to act as referee here. You're right. He's basically said it's inevitable Iran's going to get a weapon, maybe 12, 13 years is the way he put it. He also said this to Thomas Friedman.
Iran will not get a nuclear weapon on my watch.
On his watch, which is, a year and a half now. We had Ambassador Bolton on as a guest about 4 weeks ago, when these negotiations were getting hot and heavy. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said, listen, the only surefire way to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is military intervention.
That's right. Look, there's no deal that we should accept that Iran will accept. The president's people, in fact, leaked in the past week that in their early discussions leading up to this, going back 2 years now, one of the first things the Iranians said was, we will not give up uranium enrichment. So the White House basically said, oh, well, if they're not going to give up uranium enrichment, what's the best deal we can get? That's where it went off the tracks. And that's why I think, although people like to say the alternative to a bad deal is a good deal, in fact, there is no good deal with this regime in power in Iran.
And KT, you don't necessarily agree that that's the only route. Why don't you?
No, and I respect Ambassador Bolton so much, but this is where I would part company. When President Obama says, well, it's either this deal or it's war, or it's this deal or we've got to bomb Iran, I think there is a middle space there. It won't happen overnight, but I do think we have enormous leverage to bear against Iran. If we choose to, we could push for a better deal by imposing more punitive sanctions. We could freeze them out of the world banking system. We can tighten the economic noose around their neck. Even if the sanctions regime collapses, we could continue it. And more importantly, we could encourage the pro-American, pro-democracy movement in Iran. We could tear down Iran's cyber wall. They have a very young and literate population. 70% of Iranians are under the age of 30. How long are they going to tolerate being ruled by a handful of 80-year-old mullahs who have pushed their economy to the brink? I think it's time to take a page from Reagan's playbook, where he looked at the Soviet Union and he said, I'm not going to capitulate and accept their ambitions. I'm not going to go to war with them. I'm going to bring them down economically. And so Reagan then maneuvered and manipulated events so that the Soviet Union ultimately collapsed.
Well, I think what we have, though, is a graphic demonstration of how sanctions have not worked since they were imposed on Iran by the Security Council in late 2006. They have failed to bring Iran's economy to a halt. They failed to slow down the nuclear weapons program. In fact, the record is since 2006, the number of centrifuges on lot has increased dramatically. Construction of the Iraq heavy reactor has proceeded. Weaponization activity has proceeded. Ballistic missile activity has proceeded. And indeed, the president himself, through his director of national intelligence, conceded that the sanctions have not slowed down the nuclear weapons program. Of course, Iran wants relief from the sanctions, which the president's about to give them, but not at the price of curtailing the nuclear weapons program. And that's the problem. The sanctions have not worked and are not going to work.
Well, currently, I agree with that, but I would take it to the next step and go and almost say, well, I'm for regime change. And
yeah, KT, I am too, but that isn't going to happen overnight either. You know,
no,
even
it
if
won't
Congress,
happen overnight. It would happen
even if
maybe
Congress imposed more sanctions, which they may well be in position to do, the Russians and the Chinese aren't going to go along. You can't have a sanctions regime that has gaping holes in it. That's what the Iranians have taken advantage of in the past 7 years, and I think every prospect is that the European resolve to keep sanctions up is just about collapsed.
All right, you two continue this up in New Hampshire when you meet up there and plan your presidential run.